Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to this new webcast for Remind Her Movement. We're really excited today. We get to talk to Tricia Connell from The Salted Sun. Yeah, she's a local entrepreneur and the founder of The Salted Sun, which is a faith-based community of women who come together to support other women in Central Florida. And that's just right now, right, Tricia?
Right.
If Tricia could have her way, she's going to expand it. It's going to be amazing. But really, Tricia, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, as I know you're a new face to them?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the show and to kind of virtually meet you all. I'm just really excited to be here to help be a part of this movement that you guys have going on here. And I think there's a lot of women who are able to help, and there's a lot of women who are in need of help. And if we meet together, I think good things will happen.
Absolutely. We couldn't agree more. As many of you know, our main mission is to end domestic violence. But one of the ways that we do that is by connecting the survivors to be able to encourage their healing through speaking, through teaching, and being able to identify those warning signs. So we definitely can relate there. And it's kind of funny because Tricia and I go back at least 4 years, something like that. We used to work together. It long before, the entrepreneurship was coming about in the Salted Sun. She's always had a couple things going on. She's great like that. But it's interesting because I actually saw Tricia on a broadcast talking about homelessness, and it was like, wait, hold on a second. Like, we are definitely going in similar directions, and we have to talk about this topic. And as you know, there's really no question as to why we talk about homelessness at Remind Her Movement. It's so important because there is this transition phase from being in an abusive relationship and really getting yourself out. It's like a rebirth. It's starting over for many people. It really isn't this snap of the fingers, I left. It's I left and then what? So I'm really excited to hear from you, Tricia. I know you've worked a lot with homelessness in our community here. Can you tell me more about the link between homelessness and domestic violence?
Yeah, I think there's a large connection there, because a lot of women, when they are in marriages or in any kind of relationship, it's traditional for the man to be the breadwinner. So if a woman is in that situation where she's like a stay-at-home mom, or maybe she just has a job that doesn't make enough that she can live on her own, she's kind of stuck, because she's in this relationship that went left and she's being abused. She knows she needs to get out of it, but she may not have family around her, or she may not want the family around her to know. So it's hard for someone to leave and do what? To live in the streets, to live in their car. They can't afford to get a home, or maybe there are resources, but they don't want to talk to anybody about it. So sometimes they get to a point where, like, it's either life or death and they have to go. And if they don't have the resources to live, then they're stuck making decisions that, may require them to just live on the streets or live in a hotel or, couch surf or something like that. So I think there's a definite connection between those two. There's a big portion of the homeless community that are women running from domestic violence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for one thing you said, you're talking about some of these options being couch surfing, right? And then shelters and hotels. There's always like these short-term solutions in the meantime.
Yeah.
What are some stories that you know of from the work that you do of that transition and how people choose between the different methods?
Yeah, it's really, it's hard. One, because like in Orlando, there's a lot of resources, but how do you get to those resources if you don't have a car, all that kind of stuff. And to make the decision, basically, okay, if you have friends and family that can allow you to couch surf, that's one way. But then it's like, how long are you going to do that? You might be in a studio apartment, a one-bedroom apartment. Shelters get full really fast, so that's hard. You might be making a decision to go to a shelter with you and 2 kids, and you're sleeping on the floor because it's so full. Hotels is like, do you have money to, pay on a weekly basis or monthly basis if you can? But some of these hotels, like in the Osceola County, there's a lot of hotels on I believe it's 192 that are people living there full time, but that's like $1,000, $1,100 a month, which they could be living in an apartment if they can reach that. But their only issue is they can't get the first and last month of or they have something on their credit that doesn't allow them to get an apartment. So it really is like, okay, how much money, cash do you have on hand? Do you have a job? If not, then can you go into shelters? And then there's that fear of that person coming after you, because there rarely is a situation where you're running from domestic violence and the husband is just like, okay, well, if you want to leave, cool. Like, no, usually there's like this pace happening, so you have to like go secretly. So shelters are usually good for that, but they get full really fast. And then there's the family option. And one thing that is difficult is when you look at statistics, they don't even include those numbers. They'll tell you they'll say like 2,000-3,000 people in Orlando are homeless, meaning literally living on the street, not including couch surfing, not including hotels, things like that. So like when you get into those numbers, then you're talking 10,000-15,000 people who are homeless, who don't have a roof over their head that they own or that they're paying rent for. It's like they're kind of in limbo.
Right. And, I didn't even think about that most of the homelessness numbers are, people living on the street. Yeah. Why is it so important for us to look at that broader number? Why is it so important, as you're saying, that limbo?
Yeah, because that broader number is like, first of all, the people who are outside of stereotypes are that broader number. So like if someone's living on the street, like that could be a choice. That could be something mentally, like that could be more of a stereotype just because that's what people see. When they see someone on the street, they're usually drunk or whatever. And it could be somebody who is not a stereotype living on the street too. I don't want to make any generalization, but the people who are either they're running from a natural disaster, they're running from domestic violence, they lost a job or something like that, they're going to find another resource that is not living on the street, which would be living in a hotel, living at a friend's house or a shelter. And it's important for us to target those people because these people, they can get out of it. They just need it oomph, whether it is mentorship, whether it's financial need, whether it is an apartment complex that will allow them to live there. Because, I have one, I was about to say case. I don't like the word case, but I have one woman that I work with who she has, I guess it technically is a felony from high school where it was like an awkward situation, but it's on her name. It's there. And it will take a lot of money for her to get it off of her. But she's doing really well. She's working really hard. She's like a manager at a food establishment. She has 2 kids. She's doing really well. So she would be able to live in an apartment, but just because that is on her name, she can't get an apartment. And they had, actually they're building out apartment complexes to help people like that, but she still wasn't even able to qualify that because I guess that popped up as well. So that's like a sticky subject of how to get people who had a bad past doing good today to get them out of that situation. But that really is like a sweet spot because you're kind of paying the price of either a bad situation that you're in or a bad past that you had, and you're not visible because you're not on the street. So yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're working with a woman like that and, now she's, more established with that family, what does it look like prior to that? What would you say to the woman who's looking at it saying, okay, I am financially dependent on this person, or at least I know I can't spend, $1,100, $1,200 on rent. And I certainly can't turn around tomorrow and walk into an apartment, especially, we're sitting in Central Florida. You do not turn around tomorrow and walk into an apartment. That's something that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money and going back and forth. You're talking about transportation, you're talking about the financial need just to be able to get those first steps established so that you can have a home, have a place to bathe, have a place to take care of your children so that you can go work more, do whatever you need for those next steps. What would you say to that woman?
I think what you're saying is really great. Speak out, because more people are willing to help than you think. There was someone, I think it was on it was an online show, and this woman was being abused. The people she was like a hairstylist and nobody knew. But then she posted she got fed up. She posted her black eye on social media. And then people helped her. And then he actually, that may not happen in all cases, but he actually felt embarrassed then because now his secret was out, that he kind of let her go. But I think speaking out is great just because, just so you can get help, because you may not be able to physically leave on your own. Because I feel like, and I haven't been in a situation personally, but I feel like in my head, but who knows what you're going to do when you're in it. I would be like a planner, plan my exit if that is something that's not a life and death situation where like you can plan your exit, meaning like secretly speaking to people, secretly trying to save money, secretly doing that, that's great. But not all situations like that are like that. So I would definitely encourage people to speak out, communicate with people, let their family and friends know, especially their family and friends, people that are close to them. And try to look at resources, try to find out what the resources are, and see what you can do to connect with somebody, because you might be able to get somebody who will drive you. You might be able to, so whatever it is, don't sit there in silence. Don't sit there and just take it, take some sort of action, because that situation is not okay, and you don't deserve it. And like, you can't just allow somebody to do that to you, especially if you have children or whatever the situation is. Just really speak out and ask for help, research what opportunities, if you can research. If not, just talk to the closest person to you. Find the nearest woman that you can and talk to them. And and then hopefully you can get some help. But speak out, is I would say to them, is don't be in silence, for sure.
Exactly. Well, I mean, like, that exit strategy is so important. One thing that we always say is it's an exit strategy. This is not the life plan. We've got it all figured out, for the rest of our lives. Yeah. Like, this is we're ending this piece. This chapter's closing. When have you ever opened a chapter in your life that you knew how that chapter was going to end? That's not the fun of it, right? And it's not really fun. It's not a fun time, but it is. It's a chapter, and it has to be open. And that's that exit strategy. What's my next move? That next big step forward. And that's really what you're speaking to here, and that's so important. I was a couch surfer, so I guess I really don't talk often about my actual exit. So I guess we can do that really quick. But our actual exit was, my home, my 3-month-old, and it came to the point where I needed him gone. I was hoping that it would just happen, that I would just say, okay, we're done. And it would go. And it didn't happen that way. Of course, it was coming back to the house. We were barricaded in the room. The cops were called. I had texted a friend saying, this is happening, and I don't know what's going to happen next, but we're locked in the room, and I don't know what to do. What do I do? Luckily, they were smart enough to call the cops. Mm-hmm. So think of the exit plan right now.
Yeah.
I have no exit plan. I just am trying to go step by step. But the cops came. They heard us in the bathroom, and they could tell that he was grabbing the baby, and they knocked on the window, and he stormed out. I mean, just hauled his hiney out, and was very upset with the cops. So the cops came in, will you write a statement? Will you do this? No, it's the father of my child. I can't do that. One of the things that when I look back, I just, you should have just done it, like taken those steps. And then I made a phone call and was like, hey, cops just came. They removed him for 24 hours. We got to go. And somebody came. I picked up diapers and wipes and a couple pairs of undies, and we left. Yeah. And that started my couch surfing. And it was, a couple houses every couple weeks, trying to make sure that it wasn't, we were harder to be found, but there was no, I'm going here, I'm going there. I got it all together. All the money's put away. It's just moving forward. And obviously we're doing fine. It took a lot of grit. We got there, but there was that homelessness stage. My boss and I even joke about it, that I used to work with the baby in my arms for a few weeks and my clothes on foosball table, because that's what we had. But, it was a stepping stone to something better. Yeah, and we've seen, like, that's my personal story of kind of that homelessness stage. And eventually we saved money. I sold the house because it was mine, which is not something everybody has. Mm-hmm. And I kept working. We ended up being able to get a home, get more established, and be close to family because we were pretty isolated. But what about the women that you see most often? Because again, like you say, when we think homelessness, we think sitting on the street with a sign, a cardboard sign, asking for money and just begging for someone to do something, which isn't always conducive when you have a child. And, it's just, you don't see that as often. So what would that story look like? What does it typically look like in homelessness for domestic violence survivors that you've witnessed?
Yeah. One thing you said that was pretty common is that whole, like, not filing a police report, because there's a mentality that happens in there. And for the people who are helping people in that situation, you have to kind of have empathy, because you might think they're crazy. You might be like, wait, this person literally said they were going to kill you and then tried to kill you. And you're saying you don't want to file a police report. You don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a whole mentality because you were in love, right? This person got to this point because you're in love with them. So there's a process that has to go mentally to get that person out of there. And then also, I'm glad you're talking about your story because like you're a professional woman, you know what I mean? So like that would be like a whole nother demographic that is not seen and probably would be harder to get help in that because you're not, quote unquote, like living in poverty. But for someone who doesn't have those opportunities and trying to leave, first thing is your safety. First thing is, you know, getting away. I love that you were moving around so that you couldn't be found because that they're going to look for you, right? And Orlando's not as big as we like to think it is. So yeah, definitely first mindset is safety. Don't think about how shelter and think about food. There is, if you have the opportunity to couch surf, if you need to sleep on the floor at a shelter, it's better than, you know, it's better than having like almost dying. So find shelter, food. There's a lot of free food in Orlando and Central Florida. So getting your hands on that. There's a lot of pantries. There's a lot of, you know, you can get food if you just ask around. So all you need is food and shelter. Just worry about that. And then once you're away and you kind of decompress from that emotional situation, then your next step should be job. Like if you have kids and you are, you know, when people live in different cities, it's kind of harder, but like they have free daycare and things like that you can get. So try to look into those situations. Maybe you can have friends that will watch your kids. If you're single, that's a little bit easier because then you're just worrying about yourself. But then next step is like getting a job because then you need to have some sort of financial money coming in just to make things easier. But my first thing would be like black out everything and think about safety once you're in that moment and just get out. Like you will figure it out as you go. Whatever it is, especially if you're a mother, right? I'm not a mother, but I know that mothers have this instinct that is like not like none other. So just first thing is just fight or flight, like just get out of the situation. However you can get out of the situation. You're in a situation where that sounds horrific. I'm glad that the police were called. But yeah, in that moment, just do what you need to do to get out, whatever that means. Just get out safe. If you have children, get them out safe. Call the police. File the police report at some point if you can. But just get out. That's I don't know if that answers the question. I just want to keep saying get out.
Hey, we say that often too, so I don't think that's the wrong thing ever. But no, you're so right. It's that hierarchy of needs. Take care of the first, and then take care of the second, and then take care of the third, and it will come together. But you're right, like that decompressing stage. Mm-hmm. You think about, you kind of live in this, right? When you're with an abuser, it's, you know, this lull, but it's coming, and then it'll hit a point, and then it usually has to die down a little bit. They can't always operate right here. They're always operating that level mentally, but you know, usually the violence isn't always, you know, peak. And then it goes back down, and you're like, okay, I can do this, and then it goes up, and then you're always in an emotional roller coaster. So the whole idea that I can't leave because I emotionally can't handle it, stronger than you've ever imagined, because you haven't been able to stop and look at that. But that decompression stage, being able to say, okay, I've done this, and now we need to focus on this and this and this. The free childcare is so important too, and it's one of those things that it's hard to think about, especially if you don't have family members who can help and jump in. I had family members who helped and jumped in, and they were the only people, you know, one person in my entire family that I would trust to say, okay, he's not going to come get the baby from this person. This isn't going to happen. You know, it's going to be okay. But there is a lot of free childcare because that is so important. You're looking at, you know, $1,000 a month in childcare, or, you know, working a full-time job. And I'm like most single moms, I have to work too. It doesn't, you know, it's not that easy to make things and make the ends meet, you know, to make yourself comfortable. So there's definitely ways to get around that. And usually the shelters too have those sorts of connections because they're used to getting these cases. Even if you end up going and couch surfing and staying with family, staying with friends, staying with people from the church community or wherever you find that solace in that place. A lot of times you can still go to the shelters and ask, right? Just ask where the resources are. It's not a, you're not using our resource so you can't get help. Everybody is here to support you. And I know that's hard to say because we know there's victim blaming, and we are hearing about that, and it's more and more public now, which, as terrible as it is to keep hearing those stories, we have to get things public to handle them.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with your story with domestic violence and with trying to leave.
Yeah.
Sure.
And understand that it's a process. It's not like, it may be months before you, like maybe even a year, before you're in a place where you feel like, okay, I'm out of this situation. Because like even anything having to do with governmental assistance is, some may be easier than others, but like the childcare process, it might be hard because you need like your kid's social security card, you need all these things, and if you ran, you may not have that. So you know what I mean. So it's like there's it's going to be a process, and for anybody who's wanting to go through that and like needs to get out of their house or is going through that now, just know, like, just take every moment at each moment. You're getting through the next 24 hours, and just think about it that way. And the next thing you know, you'll find yourself getting further and further out of the situation. And just think mentally, because like rarely, I would say, if any, like no one's physically getting abused and not mentally getting abused. So that for those that's where the people around you help out, because it's like you have to reverse what you've been hearing this whole entire time that is making you believe that the abuse is okay, or making you believe that you're not good enough, or that you deserved it, or whatever it is that they've been saying to you for however long they've been saying it to you. You now have to break that out too. So I just, I pray everyone can find someone, even if it's just one person who can be an advocate for them and spend time, speaking life into them, because that's a very hard situation. And it is ups and downs, especially when they get out. Like if you ever have the opportunity to help somebody in that situation, the conversations every day are going to be different. One day it's like, I'm out of here, I'm so done with that person. The next day you might be like having to talk them off the ledge again. Like, no, you can't go back. No, you know what I mean? They called me and I spoke to them. Why'd you speak to them? Like, so it's a whole, it's hard. It's an emotional thing more than anything. And then the physical part of it is just like logistics of how trying to get help from the people that are around you and the resources that are there, and then getting to those resources. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No contact survivors.
No, right.
No contact. And that's hard too when you have kids. I had a son. So, it wasn't no contact, but it was strategic contact. It was limited. There was no talk about us or anything. And eventually the courts decided to take it over to decide what to happen with contact, with visitation, things like that. And that honestly was the best way to handle it for me. And, talking about kind of leaving and fleeing without all your stuff, you're going to flee without all your stuff. There's essentials. It's good if you have the forethought to get items together, important documents, flipping them out into the mail. As scary as that is, putting them in the mail is a lot scarier to not have them. You can get social security cards again. You can get birth certificates again. You can get all of these things. It's not the end. And really, I was one who never wanted to call the police and didn't want intervention in that way. There was something that seemed very forceful, as weird as that sounds, like forceful, aggressive, I guess. I don't know exactly why I thought it was such a bad thing. But when I did eventually have to grab some things out of the house, the police came with me. They helped gather things, and they served an injunction right there. So there's ways around it, but everything's figure outable. I think Marie Forleo says that all the time. Everything's figure outable, and it really, really is. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting too what you were saying about like the timeline, because there's that mentality that there's no end in sight, right? Because we are taking baby steps. We don't have a full life plan with it. What do you see most often? How long is that period of transition from, leaving and having no real solidified place to go? I know you kind of called it like the limbo, like where are we going next? To actually maybe having an established place, having an apartment, things like that.
I mean, depending on the situation, if you're somebody who, let's do the worst case scenario, you don't have any money, you're not working, you're a stay-at-home mom, it might take you a year to feel safe. So I want to give dramatic numbers so that people can mentally prepare themselves for what's happening. You know, it may happen sooner, you know, who knows if you have help financially, but just know that, like, okay, this is not just, once you escape, have the mindset of, okay, now you're doing this for yourself. Just like you would have the mindset of going to college. You're about to go rebuild your life and you're going to become independent. You're not going to be in this situation again. It's a whole process. So just start from step 1, shelter, food. Step 2, how do I start to get finances? Step 3, how do I get a home? What do I need to do to do that? And then whatever it is you need to do that, that's going to take time to get you there, because you need to raise money unless you get some sort of assistance. But mentally prepare yourself, because then there's also the emotional part of like breaking the tie from them. That's going to be a whole counseling sessions needed. Then the kids, if there's kids, they need to be counseling sessions, because the situation that I was mentioning earlier, her kids were like 4 and 1. Like maybe like the 3-year-old was like 3 and then turned 4 during the time. And she would just say random things that were like, she knew what was happening, you know, and she would kind of like randomly start mimicking what the mom was saying during a fight, or, you know what I mean? So like she's picking up the different things. So the kids need help as well. So give yourself a year to really, you know, try to get yourself it's always going to be a process, but mentally strong enough to not have to, you know, accept that kind of behavior and just move on with your life. It may take a few months for you to get to a point where you're like, I'm in a routine where I know where to get food now. I know what assistance I have available to me. I know what I need to do to get that. So that would be sooner, but it's going to be a process after that of maintaining your separation from them. And then, like you were saying, you can't, like, I don't have kids. So sometimes I would say like, no, don't co-parent, just run away. Like, you know, but like, you have to think about your kids too. So there might be some level of co-parenting, and fathers have rights and all that kind of stuff. So, like, get yourself mentally ready to be able to do like what you did, where you're controlling the situation, because they're always going to try to bring the conversation around. Like, you have to really shut it down. Like, here, you can talk to the kids. Like, if you're picking them up, there's a neutral place that I will not be at that you're going to pick them up. You know, so you can have like, really, you have to really just like kind of put your big girl panties on and like really like, you know, fight your way through it. But yeah, I would say, long story short, a few months to get yourself into a routine, a year or so to get yourself to a point where you're that you can say that was the past.
Yeah. And I mean, that's so important too, to think about it as not like this is, you know, most people are 5 to 10 years without reestablishing it. It's not like that. And it might feel that way, you know, depending on where you are and what you do, and think about how long you've been with that person, or how long it took you to get to a good place until you met that person, and watch everything kind of go in a different direction before you even notice, right? Like usually that's like a blink of the eye. What just happened? So I think that's really important too. But one thing that you said that was just like, was, you know, hearing a 3 and a 4, you know, 3 to 4 year old repeat things that they're seeing. And with me, there were 4 children involved, only one of them being mine. And that was one of the reasons why I actually left, I think, was because you're just looking at these children and you're going, well, you know, I can hide it. You're not hiding it. It's almost impossible to hide it. They know, and they're going to see, you know, well, they see this, they're going to see mom struggle, and they're going to see mom weak, and they're going to see, you know, the PTSD and the emotion and fight. Because, you know, a lot of times there is that fight, especially when you're talking about co-parenting. You know, there's that fight for respect, and that we have to do things a certain way. We have to get out and we need to go on this way. And, you know, then there's court systems and everything else. But these things are taking a stand as to what's right and what's wrong and what you want them to be and see and do in the future. Nothing speaks louder to a child than your personal actions. Your testimony and your life is what's going to speak to them. So, you know, I still struggle with that. You know, there's 2 parents involved, That's like the whole court system. I know women are always on the page talking about it. I live it too, so I'm right there with you. But it's that process of being able to get to the next step and look at it and say there's going to be two people in this equation, but I'm one of those people and I'm not going anywhere. And that's the one stand I'm able to make, is that this is not okay. And staying sometimes, I worried that was making it okay. That was making it seem okay. Well, I know we covered a lot. I want to just leave with one more thing. We're called Remind Her movement, right? You see on our page all the time, we have little Remind Hers. What's one thing you'd want to leave as a reminder to anyone seeing this who's interested in the Salted Sun? What would you tell them?
I would like to remind you who you were before you were in that situation, because women are strong and women will always think that they would never get into that situation. And when you're in it, it's because you're losing yourself. So just remind yourself how strong you were, and how strong because that's how strong you are. And just remind yourself that, you're worth anything that your heart desires. And there's no scenario where being physically abused, mentally abused, or emotionally abused is justified, regardless of how you act. I don't care if you're the meanest person, there's no scenario that makes that okay. And remind yourself who you were, who God made you, regardless of what God you believe in, who you were created to be, and become that person. Allow that person to become the forefront, have an out-of-body experience and let that person take charge. But just remind yourself that you are great, you're talented, you don't deserve any of it.
Absolutely. And that woman that you were before, she's not far. She's right there. But you've got to be able to strip away the rest. And two, there's that idea of, how strong you are, like dealing with that day in and day out, the things that you need to keep the kids from seeing it and to keep family from seeing it and just to keep yourself going forward.
Yeah.
That's one hell of a strength.
That's a good point.
Turn that out for you. That's just
a good point.
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way, but it takes more strength to stay in it than it does to get out of it. So
much more. And again, like you said, it's a process. There's ups and downs, but it makes all the difference to be able to start over and rebuild. Well, I love that, Tricia. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us your time. I know the Salted Sun keeps you busy. You're doing a lot.
Yes. No, I appreciate it. It's good work. I'm excited to be a part of people's lives, and I hope anyone who's listening to this, if you're in this situation and you're being abused, I hope that Remind Her is giving you the courage to choose yourself and get out of the situation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tricia. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.